feel as though it could be good practice for me, just because, I don't know. I feel like I'm pretty much an amateur. So let's just get into it, I guess. I never know how to do these transitions. Okay, so for the first one, I found this piece. I'll show you the original. This one is probably my least favorite out of the three, just because, I don't know. It's weird. Usually I'm pretty used to doing portraits, but this one just, I don't know. It feels like it's missing something. Or I don't know, maybe the anatomy is wrong. This tends to be kind of a thing that I suck at whenever it comes to recreating someone's more so cartoony characters and then turning them into a more semi-realistic style that I'm used to. I don't know. It's alright, I guess. The first thing I did was just come up with a sketch, which honestly wasn't that hard. I tried to make it a bit more original because I saw other people's styles, and it just seemed like a basic thing of the same position and face pose, I guess. So I just made it more so pretty much, I wouldn't say exactly a front view, but kind of like a little bit of a sideways view. I don't know how you would describe it. So after that, I think I just started coloring in, although I think I did it a bit differently than what I usually do. Usually I just tend to put in one solid color, but for this one I think I just went, all crazy with it, and that's probably why I don't really like this one as much. It just didn't really come out as well, but I don't know. I guess one thing I do like about this one is definitely the colors that I made. I definitely did try to make it a bit more realistic, but also I tend to use bright colors when it comes to this style, which, because I just like, that's pretty much all of it. Another thing, I was rather unsure about the art style that I should go in for this one, just because, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, the original piece was more cartoony, and the thing is, I never really know what to do in that situation. I could have just made a cartoony style, but then I figured, that's not really a whole lot of effort. But yeah, I just went with my basic Instagram art style. And for my Instagram art style, I guess, I tend to do more of a stylistic realism or a semi-realism. I don't really know how to properly describe it. And the shading wasn't that really hard. I just basically used a bunch of subtle color burning and then added in a little bit of black. I tried not to use a whole lot of it. For the most part, honestly, I'd say I used a lot more highlights, which it isn't bad. It still turned out pretty good. I think the only thing that I probably don't like, I think, is just the face. Just something about it. But yeah, that's pretty much it, this whole thing. Okay, onto my second favorite one. This one I kind of like. So the main difference between this one and the last one is that these were actually full body poses. So one thing that I did change was the pose, because in the original one it was far different. I'll show you a picture right now, hopefully, if I'm not too lazy. I was thinking doing a more original pose just because everyone else's seemed very similar, and so I wanted to try something different. I don't know if I pulled it off. Anatomy doesn't really tend to be my greatest thing. That's still something I kind of suck at, but I don't know. I'll let you guys decide. I will say though that the coloring in this one is a lot better, at least in my opinion. I probably could have worked on the shoes a bit more, worked on the contrast a bit on those, but everything else was pretty good. I definitely loved the hair for this one. It just came out very... It's a bit more cartoony than the last one, but I don't think it's bad per se. I think it's still very detailed enough. As well as really the highlights and the dark shadows as well. I think it came out pretty well, this one. Again, the problem that I tend to not really like is probably just the anatomy. It just still looks slightly off. Something about it. I guess I could have used a reference, but I don't know. For some reason, I tend to not use a reference. I don't know why. It's not that references are bad to use. But yeah, that was pretty much this one. This one was pretty straightforward. Obviously no background because I didn't know what to really put in for the background for this one, since the original didn't have one either. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, now on to my favorite one of the three. This one I loved. I just liked the original piece. It was definitely an art style that I'm not used to really trying to replicate. So I was definitely curious to see how my interpretation would look of this one. So the first thing that I was trying to think of was obviously the art style, just simply because the first one had a more, I want to say comic book-ish art style a bit, just with all the black in the original art piece. But the thing is, I don't really tend to use black a whole lot just because that's just something I don't really do. So the first thing I did was roughly come up with a sketch. I kept the pose the same. After that, I made one rough sketch, and then after that, I made another rough sketch. And then after that, I came up with all the basic colors. I'd say the biggest change was probably, well, besides the art style, was probably having his eyes cover having hair cover his eyes, because in the original, obviously, there wasn't anything there, but I think this still kind of has that same mood, per se. Another thing that probably sticks out the most for this one is probably just the amount of detail. So, obviously, you got the highlights, but then you also have the darkness. And then, even for some parts, such as the fur and the shoulder pads, you can definitely tell it has a more metallic look to it. After I was done shading, I then worked on a little bit of the background and foreground. So I already had brush sets. In the original one, it looked like more so flowers. So I pretty much just went all crazy. I put some obviously on the ground, but I also had some in the wind as well. And then I also put in the skeleton hats, helmets, whatever. That definitely helped a lot. It just looks so cool. I just love how this one turned out. Yeah, there really isn't a whole much to say. It's just sort of like, you just look at it and then you can just admire it. But yeah, that's pretty much this one. This one was probably my favorite out of the three, at least in my opinion. So that pretty much covers all three of them. Let me know what you think of all three of them. If there's anyone watching, I doubt it. So in the meantime, usual stuff, subscribe, leave a like, comment, etc. Bye.